Welcome back to the show. Now, just a quick reminder, I'm here with Robert Tunley.
Hello, hello.
Pete Chapman.
Nah.
And Connor Mumford.
Afternoon.
Okay, guys, we're going to talk about the Champions League. We're first going to start talking about the shock Liverpool defeat away at Red Star Belgrade. To get us started, here's Jurgen's a clip from Jurgen of his response to the game.
Of course, you could see that a few things are not going too well, but we had chances. Then he had, I think, a chance he usually scores with. We had our moments in the box. They defended on the line twice after headers from us, but then they had too many set pieces. That's true. And then with one of them they scored when the block worked for Virgil in that area. So they could score that goal, and out of the blue, more or less, they could score the second one. And then, of course, the atmosphere was completely different. It was you could feel it. They were, if you want, on their bikes, and we had to deal with the situation. And half-time, we tried to change a few things and did that. And again, then the second half was really dominant, of course. We didn't score. We had the situations, scrumpy balls, Sadio, Mo, where we then, of course, the last one, Sadio's most chance was big. Then a lot of balls which wouldn't even count as a shot on target because we missed the target. So we had them. It's hypothetical, but if we score with one of them, the game can change. But we didn't. So they stayed completely comfortable. Were fighting really hard. So they deserved the 3 points. That's what we have to admit.
Well, that was another top Klopp clip, I think you guys could say.
Say it faster. Go on.
Top Klopp clip.
There we go.
I'm pretty good.
Right, Pete. Now, you had some strong opinions about this game on Monday when we discussed about it. Now, you could argue that, especially in the second half, Liverpool were dominant and they should have taken the lead with Sturridge early on. But how would you assess the game yourself?
Well, like I said, I thought Red Star had a really good chance of winning the game. And they proved me right. Everyone else was against that. And no, obviously, I said those games were pointless. And I still agree with that. I mean, Red Star are not going to win the competition. Great to see, as a United fan, Liverpool lose. And yeah, nice for the lad to score 2 goals.
It was the second goal especially was absolutely fantastic. Arguably one of the goals of the competition so far.
Definitely.
Connor, what can Liverpool take away from this game? Like Pete was right on Monday, they should have won this game easily.
Yeah, they should have. I don't want to use tiredness as an excuse, but I think it must be a case of Klopp didn't rotate enough players.
There were changes made.
There were a few, yeah, but after a hard-fought game at Arsenal, you really want a fresh side after that.
You think he almost should have put 10 new guys out there?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, you can keep the goalkeeper, and obviously one of the goals he could do nothing about. But I think from this, Liverpool have just got to... I think they underestimated their opponent. They thought like us, that they could turn up there, walk it, get a win, and go home. Whereas the team turned up and thought, nah, we're not going to sit down and just let this big team roll us over like maybe other teams, Southampton, might have done. But that's what happens.
Well, Liverpool definitely had plenty of chances in the game. Red Star have had a few results at home this year in the Champions League. I think they got a point off both PSG and Napoli.
Apparently they've got, I think it's like 15 clean sheets at home in Europe or something like that.
What, Red Star have
I think
at home?
10 or 15, I think.
Christ.
Do you think the outside distractions around the Liverpool game had anything to play?
Well, I did see a video from BBC Sport that was like showing the tunnel out to the game, and it was like riot guards side by side. So I think the atmosphere may have, even Klopp said it himself, the atmosphere definitely worked to Red Star's advantage.
Well, I think we were right. It was a good thing that Shaqiri didn't go. I think it would have only been worse. But ultimately, Liverpool didn't put their chances away, and they had plenty of them. I think that's the reason that they didn't get a result. Moving on to Tottenham, they've managed to keep in their chances of qualifying to the next round up with a last-minute win over PSV. Pete, a lot of people maybe criticising Kane this year, saying that he's overly tired, but once again he performs for Tottenham.
Well, I mean, I'm old school. If your striker scores goals, then he's doing his job all right. So yeah, I mean, maybe his all-round game hasn't been great. I don't think his scoring record's too bad this year still, is it? I don't think he's...
No, he's been doing okay. I think people are more concerned about the mileage he's covering. He used to run absolutely all over the pitch, and now it seems he's maybe a little bit more selective of when he does his sprints. But Pete, do we have any idea of what Tottenham's chances of going through are? What sort of results they need?
So they were, I believe they're 3 points behind Inter Milan with 2 games left, and Inter are second in the group.
So essentially, they need Barcelona to keep winning to win the group, so that they can hopefully snatch second.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not an easy situation, but they need to really crack on now, and it needs to be an upset. I think they need upsets. They need strong performances if they've got any chance of going through. But I think they're out, to be honest.
Connor, what do you think? Do you think they can get through?
It'll be difficult for them. Obviously, I don't think they made it through last season. I think they were knocked out in the group stages again.
I believe so.
So it'll be a big test, especially with their squad and how they didn't improve. If that's the same squad week in, week out in the Premier League, and then they've got to do Tuesday night, Wednesday night games in the Champions League, it'll be interesting to see if that plays a part. But they've got a big ground to make up if they've got any chance of qualifying. But they're a capable team. They could do it.
Next up, we're talking about Inter Milan and Barcelona, the other team in those groups. Once again, Inter Milan relying on Icardi. He seemed to not be in the game at all until he scored that last-minute goal. He's, a great throwback striker where, he turns up when he's needed. But personally, for my highlight of the game was seeing Malcolm's goal. He was on for 90 seconds on as a sub. Coutinho, lovely bit of skill in the middle of the pitch, gets the ball to Malcolm, fake shots, and then puts the ball away in the corner. It was his first goal for Barcelona. Came for good money from France over the summer, and it looks that Barcelona continuing their sort of stride through. But yeah, again, Icardi proving that he's one of Europe's top strikers. Also, we had Atletico Madrid beating Dortmund. Griezmann scored his 20th Champions League goal of his career. Even though Dortmund emphatically beat Atletico in the previous round, I think Atletico, especially at home, proved their quality. Dortmund maybe shown a little bit of inexperience with some not lackadaisical defending, but maybe, Atletico's defence, you would definitely not expect that sort of thing from. What sort of chances do you give Atletico, Pete, long term in the competition?
I think they're a very strong team, and you mentioned the other Dortmund game, but they're one of my favourite teams in Europe because they play football the way I like to see it played, old school, strong in defence, and then let your flair players do what they want in terms of Griezmann and those kind of guys. And I love Costa. I'm not sure, did Costa play yesterday?
I'm not sure. But certainly I think that Simeone seems like the kind of manager who, after that first Dortmund result, probably would have ensured that was definitely not happening again. I think that maybe like Sir Alex Ferguson, if Simeone's team wins, if they lose the previous week, they're definitely going to get a result the following week. Connor, Club Brugge went away to Monaco, who are in the relegation zone in France, and emphatically beat them 4-0. It was Monaco's biggest away loss in Europe, and it was Club Brugge's biggest away win in Europe. How do you feel Henry's getting on in his first managerial job?
I feel bad for him. I mean, he's a great guy. I don't know whether he's ready for a big club, but that's not to say that inexperienced managers can't take control of a big club and do well. We've seen it happen before, but things aren't falling for him. I don't know whether it's the management or the players, or maybe both. But obviously they've had issues not just in the Champions League. This is Henry's third defeat in 5 games, and he hasn't won yet. And overall, it's Monaco's. They haven't won in 15 games. So I think it's more a case of the team isn't good enough.
It's a tricky situation for him because it is still an incredibly young team. And for Henry in his first job, I'm sure he would hope that there would be plenty of strong leaders in that dressing room. But with the team so young, he's probably clutching at straws to look for leaders on the pitch. It was Napoli 1, PSG 1 as well. PSG putting some of the best defensive players in that I've seen for a good while. Buffon making his return to the Champions League and put in a really stellar performance. But once again, Napoli managed to get a result. Quite interesting seeing Ancelotti leading Napoli as Buffon was his goalkeeper at Parma near the start of his career, and seeing Buffon, I think he is 40 now, isn't he?
He's quite old. He's around that age.
Buffon is old.
Very old.
But still putting in great performances at the top level, and maybe PSG should have reconsidered maybe potentially moving him on. Pete, do you consider Napoli or PSG serious contenders for the title, for the Champions League?
I don't consider Napoli serious contenders, just because I think elite clubs have the depth to go the distance, and this is what it is. It's a
marathon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I don't think they've got some great players, Napoli, and they have got a good squad. But in terms of teams like PSG, Barcelona, Man City, there are good teams with a lot of depth, and I don't think PSG are likely. Probably maybe 4th pick for me, PSG.
So you can see them going to the semis probably,
yeah.
but not. For me, they lack a little bit of a backbone. I mean, like it's the classic case of this is a team assembled by money, and if they were to play maybe someone like Atletico Madrid in semi-final, I think I'd always back Atletico Madrid
Yeah, I
just
agree with
because
that.
they're so strong and solid. Connor, who's your favourite for the tournament so far?
It's, to be fair, it's quite difficult to tell. Like, all of the big hitters have had difficult results. Even Real Madrid, who've won it 3 times on the bounce now, they've not performed that well. Liverpool, again, they're having a mixed bag. Tottenham, Man City are. Barcelona getting the draw. Everyone's sort of it's difficult to tell right now. It depends who comes out on top from the group stages, I think.
Well, United go away to Juventus tonight. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff. A lot of people would put Juve as heavy favourites. A lot of people saying this is the greatest Juventus side ever assembled with Ronaldo up top, and with Man United managed to scrape 3 points against Bournemouth. Pete, how do you think Mourinho is going to approach this game?
I mean, you'd like to see it start how the game finished at Bournemouth. Rashford on, definitely, leading the line. No Lukaku in the squad to travel, so if Rashford doesn't lead the line, I think he has to explain that one. But yeah, I'd like to see us have a go. We never do. But yeah, I can't see us. United are going to lose, definitely, and I'm looking forward to being disappointed.
Connor, Man City have got what Pete would describe as a pointless game against Shakhtar Donetsk. Can you see anything but maybe a 4 or 5-0 win for them?
Again, Man City were shocked by a team as well. They were. Who were they?
Well, I think they
beat
did.
them?
I think they did lose to Shakhtar Donetsk. I think last year. I'm not quite sure what
Lost to Lyon this year. didn't they, I
lost to
think?
Lyon. Do you think that Pep will ensure the 3 points this time?
Are they at home?
Yes, they are.
Then there's no excuse for not getting the 3 points. But again, I think they lost the Lyon game at home as well. So
Yeah, I think Pep was very angry with his team. But we're going to move on now. We're going to play some music, and then we'll be moving on to our debate topics.
Talking Balls on Jam Live Radio.
Welcome back to Talking Balls. Now we're going to talk about a few more of the fixtures tonight. Pete, Real Madrid are away to Victoria Pilsen. How do you think that they're going to shape up for this game? This should be an obvious win, but they've had a tricky season. I believe they got their first win in a while on the weekend. Do you see them barreling through their group in this game?
Yeah, I do actually. Santi Solari's in charge now. Got them their first league win in 6 games in his first game. This is his first Champions League game. Nice, easy start, although it's away. I think it'll be a comfortable 3-4-0 win for Real Madrid. But I have been wrong about that kind of thing in the past.
Yeah, you have, oddly enough. I think Real Madrid still have, even though Ronaldo's gone, Real Madrid still have an incredible squad and should still consider themselves favourites for one of the favourites for the competition. It would be incredible if they managed to get the 4-peat in the Champions League, which I'm pretty sure would probably be never been done before. Connor, do you think that they can still live up to the heights without Ronaldo?
Well, they haven't proved it yet, I don't think. But that's not to say they've got. It wasn't just a Ronaldo side. Like, they've got Bale still there and Benzema. Like, they have good
Asensio
players
as well and Isco.
Exactly, they've got great players playing for that team, but for some reason, their old manager couldn't get them firing. Whether that's because there was too much pressure after he was unceremoniously sacked from the Spain job 2 days before, or 5 days before the World Cup. Who knows? There was just too much pressure on him by the looks of it.
That poor chap's career took a huge dive
I
in
don't
6
know where
months.
he'll probably turn up managing Huddersfield.
They're managing China or something, I think.
He'll save
yeah.
Huddersfield from relegation near the end of the season.
Yeah.
Pete, Bayern Munich, I believe they're still not top, but ultimately they're always one of the favourites, but have yet to win it since they beat Dortmund in the final at Wembley. I know they're one of the top sides, but I'd consider Juventus and Real Madrid and Man City better than them. Do you still consider them at the top table?
Yeah, again, a team I'd be surprised if they didn't get through to the later stages of the competition. I mean, they're second in their group, joint on points with Ajax, who are top. They're definitely going through their group. There's no doubt about that. Good side. A couple of the stars aging a bit, but yeah, I still fancy Bayern Munich as a good side.
As Pete said, Connor, Ajax are top of that group. Do you consider Benfica or Ajax a real threat to Bayern Munich? Ajax aren't even top in Eredivisie at the minute, but they are, as Pete said, top of the group.
I think it depends how these games tonight go. If Ajax come out of this with a win, they'll be favourites to go through, but I don't think that makes them favourites to win the competition. Because for all we know, they could go through, get drawn against Juventus next, and then get absolutely battered home and away. So it all depends on who turns up.
Well, I do like the look of Ajax this year. They've still got a bunch of amazing young players, but their league form maybe hasn't been as good as it has been in previous years. Pete, both Lyon got a victory over Man City, and Hoffenheim even went 1-0 up against Man City in a previous round. Who do you see taking the win here?
That's a tough one for me. I mean,
Memphis Depay playing a former Man United player.
yeah, big fan of Memphis. I think that they're a good side. Is Fekir fit at the minute? I'm not too sure.
I believe so. They've got a great forward line there at Lyon.
Yeah.
They tend to score plenty of goals in the league.
Yeah, I fancy Lyon to go through second and be a decent side in the competition. One of those teams that can easily be underestimated. Not the bracket of Red Star or Victoria Pilsen, a bit above that. The level of Valencia, that kind of thing. That second bracket, Man United, those kind of teams. So I fancy Lyon to go through.
I do like Hoffenheim for the fact of how young their manager is. He's one of these few managers in the world who are still in their 30s. He sort of came out of nowhere to take lead, and it's only impressive the fact that he has players in his side which are older than him, and yet he's leading his side to the Champions League. And you've got to be a certain type of person to be able to still command the respect and still be younger than some of the players that you have on the pitch for you. Connor, Roma made a great run last year. They lost some stars though, but they've brought in some good young players. Do you see them maybe topping Real Madrid for this group?
At the minute, yeah. It depends how Real Madrid come out tonight. But based on Real's current form, Roma look the favourites for that group. I think the Moscow-Roma game is more evenly balanced than, say, most of the other games on tonight, because I both consider them to be within the same quality class. I may be wrong, but that's how I see that game going. That is very much like Pete would say, they're both teams that just sort of don't add anything, and it's more of a dead rubber game. But with Roma at the top of the group, they have a lot to play for.
That's fair. Pete, also United and Juventus' group are Valencia young boys. Now I'm sure that Valencia are strong favourites for this one. Can you legitimately see Valencia beating out Man United for that knockout stage place?
I can see it. Yeah, I can definitely see it happening. So I'll be rooting for the young boys tonight. I've always been a fan of young boys. But yeah, I think Valencia have got a great chance of winning today, unfortunately.
Okay, there's your Champions League preview for all of tonight's game. Rob, we've got a returning segment up next.
Yeah, I'm back with, I think, quite a good segment that we premiered on Monday. It's the debate section.
Quite a good section.
I hope it was good. I think the listeners enjoyed it. Another couple of great subjects tonight. It's your three's job to convince me to your opinion. And our first opinion tonight is one that Pete brought up on Monday's show, and unfortunately kind of ate his words on that one.
Nope.
With Red Star Belgrade should have been in the Champions League, and they went on to beat Liverpool. So I think debate me on whether you think small teams like that should be in the Champions League.
Let you take the lead, Pete.
Bring in the debate music.
Okay, good.
The debate on Talking Balls.
Pete, if you want to take the lead.
Yeah, cool. I'm buzzing from that music, so I'll jump in. Yeah, I've got nothing against small teams in cup competitions. It's one of the greatest moments in football to see a smaller team, do well. However, it's the Champions League, the elite competition. I just want to see elite teams play against elite teams, and yeah, there are places for smaller teams in competitions, of course, but I would like a European competition consisting of purely the best teams.
Sounds a lot like a European Super League, Pete.
Completely different to the European Super League. Nobody would have to leave their domestic league. Just the Champions League replaced or altered to include just the cream of the crop, as it were.
Connor, how do you feel about this?
Well, I think if you're going to take out smaller teams from competitions like this, then you've got to question why it puts in the same bracket why smaller teams are in the FA Cup. It's because it always gives that...
That's why I agree with you.
It always puts that unexpected element in there that one of these teams might do well. It's like saying why are certain clubs in the Premier League when they're not as good as Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City? If lower clubs weren't in competitions...
It's not like saying that at all, by the way.
If lower clubs weren't in competitions, you wouldn't have had Leicester winning the Premier League.
But that's not what I'm saying at all. This is a cup competition. It's meant to be the elite It's the Champions League. I get
It is, and
it's no longer just the country's champions that are in it. It's extended. It'll be extended again to include more teams just for revenue. I disagree with that. I just want to see the best teams play against the best teams. We don't need filler. I understand the small club, they might win it. No, Red Star Belgrade are not going to win the Champions League. I'll bet anything on that.
I hope they do now.
I bet you do, yeah, but they won't.
Okay, Tim, what's your opinion on it?
Well, for me, the point of the Champions League is to get all of the best teams from each European country to take on each other. It's not about just what straight up are the best teams in Europe. It's about taking each club from, not every country, but the champions and sort of seconds and runners up from each country and letting them face each other. It's not necessarily about who has the biggest budget, who's got the biggest brand. For me, it's about who the champions are of each nation. Pete, how would you go about selecting, ensuring that just the top teams are in your version of the Champions League?
Well, there are several ways to do it. I think there are league rating systems. There are club finances. I mean, you could argue.
So you'd go off budget?
Oh, I think it could be one factor of determining what is a good team, what is that bracket of team, what's the cut-off.
Man United have had a huge budget, yet they're not one of the top teams in Europe.
Disagree. Finished second in the Premier League last year, the biggest league in the world. Is that not a good result?
Yeah, but according to you, only the champions should be in the...
No, I think it's called the Champions League, of course, but they're an elite bracket of teams. I mean...
What about Arsenal then? Arsenal have a huge budget.
They're not in the Champions League.
No, but they have been.
Like going on your system, they should be in the Champions
If they've got a huge budget, surely they should be in the Champions
I'm not saying we've got like 6 big teams in England. I'm not saying all 6 England big teams should be in there, and then Spain's 3 big teams should be in there. I mean, you could have 2 from each country, the top 2 in each country of the major leagues. And there is definitely a consensus that there are major leagues and smaller leagues. That's undeniable, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. I just like seeing the big matchups. I think it's hard for fans to travel to places like Belgrade and witness a game in that atmosphere. I know people like that kind of atmosphere and stuff. But it's not really a competitive game. You've got teams in this competition that just water it down. And I know, again, you'll say Red Star won. Doesn't matter. It's not. It's the point of the thing.
Surely, what it sounds like you want is you just want an international Champions Cup, which is that thing they hold in the friendly in the summer.
Pre-season tournament.
Yeah.
Essentially, that is what I want. Yeah, but competitive.
Why don't you just watch that?
It's not competitive. It's friendly.
It's
maybe for a Liverpool fan, mate, you count those trophies, don't you? But
there's a trophy at the end of it.
It's like the Emirates Cup,
so
isn't
what?
it? Arsenal give themselves a trophy for.
All right. So what the Community Shield? Is that pointless?
It is kind of, yeah.
So Pete, if you went by your system,
it's not my system, by the way. It's not
a system that you'd
I
like
haven't
to
got
see.
a system.
At the end of the day, there's always going to be a losing team in there, whether they have a massive budget or not. Would you just not say, they shouldn't be in the Champions League that year?
What do you mean?
Well, if Arsenal were terrible but had a massive budget, would you have the same argument?
No, I didn't say budget is the determining factor. I said it could be used as one part of an equation to determine the biggest teams.
So what about if Bournemouth were to finish 4th or 5th this season and got into the Champions League? Would they not be allowed to be in the Champions League?
Of course, they're allowed to be in the Champions League.
They're a small club.
I've not got a plan, mate. I've not got like a league, a competition drawn up. I just want to see the biggest teams play the biggest teams, and in that way of thinking, Bournemouth wouldn't qualify for my elite league.
Would you make it a knockout competition from the start like it used to be?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that much, Tim, to be honest. I mean,
I quite like that style because I think ultimately it would get rid of the so-called lesser teams quicker.
That's a good point.
How do you match it up,
most of them would be the old European Cup used to be done as such. Yeah, you do a draw. I guess is try and make sure that countries from the teams from the same country probably wouldn't face each other in the early rounds if possible. But I think Pete has merit, but ultimately, part of the love of football is that, is to see the big teams fall and to know that anyone could win any game.
Totally agree.
And, that's why I would always want these smaller teams in the competition.
Is there some more from you, Connor? What about the money aspect? Do you think the money plays a huge part in these small clubs? Even if they're knocked out in the first round, there must be a huge cash injection.
Yeah, I think it is a case of when a small club is in the Champions League, not only qualifying for the qualification stage wins them money, but then qualifying for the group stage earns them more, and then even if they were to get past group stage, even more money, and even with every win or every performance they get television revenue and everything. So it's a good way of giving these smaller clubs that may not have a huge budget a good boost of income, and then it's up to them how well they do it. And it could, like say Bournemouth did get in there with the kind of money they get from the Champions League, they could put that towards their youth system, and England could have more star players coming through.
I counter that argument though. What have Leicester City done?
they had a huge budget to start with, so I don't think.
I don't think huge.
Well, they had.
They don't bring
plenty
in huge
no,
stars.
but if they wanted to spend the money, they have the power to spend the money, whereas a side like Bournemouth don't.
I'd argue that Leicester's run in the Champions League after they won, they made it to the quarters, didn't they? I think they got beaten up by Seville. That for me was one of the most enjoyable things to watch in that season. Seeing this team that did so well in England prove it in Europe, making it to deep into the knockout stage. And
even though their league form did suffer for it, which I think is an issue with lower teams.
Well, we see it in Europa League all the time. You know, any new team that goes into Europa League tends to bottom out in the Premier League, especially in the first half of the season. You know, they're really struggling with Burnley exactly this season. I like the format because it allows teams like Leicester their opportunity, and you know, the budget thing I like. The only problem with the budget slightly is when you get teams like Red Star and maybe Celtic, when only one team from that country qualifies for the Champions League. They get a huge cash injection every year because they tend to finish top, and then they just completely lose everyone else in the rest of their league, just like Celtic have. Celtic's budget compared to everyone else is enormous because they tend to make it into the Champions League.
Even though for some reason this year now both Scottish teams are in the Europa League.
Well, yes. Well, Brendan Rodgers is once again sort of failed in Europe for Celtic. Pete, Rob, how are you
Do you have a
thinking?
counter to that, Pete?
I wasn't listening, mate. To be honest, I'm joking. Yeah, I mean, again, it's not a plan I've thought up. I've not pitched this to UEFA or anything. I love the big European fixtures, man. I love United versus Juve tonight. I love those big games. United versus Young Boys, of course, I watched it, but I just don't care, man.
It didn't excite you.
I don't care. I don't get excited by Young Boys at all.
Pete doesn't like
So,
Less of that.
Okay, I think my final decision's going to have the rest of Connor and Tim. I do think there's a place for smaller teams in the Champions League. I think even if they are knocked out in the first round or two, or even provide this massive entertainment. You know, you have these entertaining huge colossus fighting each other in Europe, but you get these also, you know, these underdog games. You get it in the FA Cup every year as well. There's always like one non-league team that gets through the third and fourth round. I think there is a place for smaller teams in the Champions League, and I think it's vital for them to be able to survive and grow. And I think, in the future it should continue.
This is something that American sport doesn't have, is teams with tiny budgets compared to other ones having the opportunity to play them, which is something we really love.
There is a different debate there. There are teams that have tiny budgets who never win. Look at the Kansas City Royals. They've won 2 World Series in about 30 years because they just don't get those TV ratings. But that's a debate for another time. Second subject for you guys. Matic has come out and said that he's not going to wear a poppy for the second time this Sunday, which is actually Remembrance Sunday, marking 100 years since the end of the war, so it's a rather big one as well. What do you guys think about people's right to wear a poppy? I'll start with you, Pete.
I think it's totally his decision. It shouldn't be forced on him to wear something. He's got a very personal and valid reason for not wearing one. I mean, I don't care at all, to be honest, mate. I think it's down to the player. If they want to choose to wear one, wear one. If you don't want to wear one, don't wear one.
Connor, how do you feel?
I agree with Pete in the aspect that it's up to them, but I think if you're there's no examples of Englishmen not wearing poppies, but if you are someone from England or someone from a country that's been affected by the wars, then you should wear one. But I understand why he's choosing not to, and I understand why is it James McLean?
James McLean, yes.
I understand why he's not wearing one either. I mean, it's up to them, but if they're English players, then they should be wearing it.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because the Premier League has become a hugely international league. You know, a smaller and smaller percentage of the players are English and British in the league every year. And ultimately, it's a very British thing. It's a part of, we've decided it to be a part of British history, wearing the poppy. And I think it is a little tricky for the players who don't want to wear it, because in the Premier League shirts, the poppy's already stitched into the shirt. So if you're the one player on the pitch who's not wearing it, it becomes obvious because you've got this huge gap in the middle of your chest where everyone else has got a poppy.
But you can't hide from anything on nowadays TV cameras and HD playback. There's nothing you can hide from.
Well, you're true. I almost feel bad for Nemanja Matic, because I feel there might be some horrible people who give him grief for deciding not to wear it, and he's got extremely valid reasons for not to.
Okay, what about this argument, which is especially prevalent in the NFL at the moment with team owners? If the team owner owns the team, obviously you're working for the team owner. If he lays out a rule and you disobey it, should you be fired?
I don't think they'll fire a footballer, but they'll definitely fine him if they disobey or they break club guidelines. But I don't think this is a club guideline.
For me, this is a freedom of speech matter.
Yeah. Whereas if he didn't turn up to training because of it, or decided not to play the game because of it, then that's where he should get fined. But just the choice of not wearing the poppy isn't a finable offence or a sackable offence.
Pete?
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I mean, you're talking to a maverick here who didn't do what what his boss told them. So yeah, I don't care, man. If my boss tried to tell me to wear a poppy and I don't want to, I'll tell him to do one. So
I think
fair play message.
I think it should be an opt-in thing instead of an opt-out thing. You know, players should, you know, before November, in October, every player should be asked, you know, do you want a poppy on your shirt? Do you want to wear an armband with a poppy on it? And players should be able to opt in, so it's easier for those players who don't feel comfortable for whatever reason.
But then you're going to get the struggle that all these players are going to bring in their charities.
Yeah, we've had that issue with Pep Guardiola, haven't we, with his little badge that he wears on his jacket about the Spanish Revolution thing for
the
Barcelona.
yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the Premier League, all these major sports leagues around the world are wanting to avoid controversy because they want viewers. They don't want to put viewers off. They want it to be as vanilla as possible. And well, you know, a league like the Premier League in the UK, there's no way they can avoid not wearing the poppy because they're in Great Britain.
Well, you could argue it might be more easier. Like, obviously, it's a bit difficult because it's always been a thing. But if they just scrapped wearing poppies, because there may be some viewers who maybe don't agree with, you know, poppies. Like James McLean's come out and said that he's not overly, you know, a fan of it, and that's why he doesn't wear it. Maybe they, you know, maybe they're excluding some viewers because they, you know, make, or there's a sort of a default for every player to wear it. Or maybe it'd be smarter for the Premier League.
They could just drop it without mentioning it, and I'm almost guarantee you hardly anyone will notice.
I disagree with that. I think it would come up massively.
I disagree with that. With the whole anthem issue in America, they tried to drop it, and it's still
That's
there.
a bit more obvious with the anthem, though. But if it's just a poppy on the shirt, then I think.
I don't think there's anyone who won't notice that.
I think
Yeah,
it's always been a thing, and like I said earlier, it's stitched into the middle of the shirts now. It's not just like a stick-on thing or an armband. You know, it's physically a part of the kit now during November.
And what about all these families and ex-soldiers that go to these games? It's not like they're not going to notice.
Yeah, you could argue that, you know, it's done in respect for them, which is completely
It's a
understandable.
lose-lose situation for Matic, at least. Like, if he wears it, he feels he's betraying his country and what he thinks. Whereas if he doesn't wear it, he'll feel he's betraying the club that he works for and, you know, his fans that might get aggressive towards him, which isn't fair.
Well, that's the argument of politics in sport, isn't it? It should be two separate things. I don't think politics should ever have a place in sport.
So it sounds like we're kind of all on the same side here, aren't we?
For a change.
So,
Did we convince you?
well, in that case, we would love to open up to the viewers listening. If you want to call in and share your opinion on people's right to wear the poppy, we'd love to hear from you. But for now, we're just going to cut away to a quick song, aren't we, Tim?
Yep.
Sacrifices made by the people who may have lost their lives, as great uncle or whatever, in the First World War, Second World War, all wars, the Balkan Wars, for example. Mm-hmm. You know, the poppy, to me, being an Antipodean, is representing sacrifice and death. It's not nationalistic, and it shouldn't be nationalistic. It's the folly of war. All those silly little flowers that grew. You know, that's what it was on both sides. German, French, you know, everybody lost someone, and it's a pride. Even if they introduced a little flag underneath to say, "Look, I'm from the Balkans," you know, that's my remembering for them. You know, or you know, it's about remembering not to do it again.
So you consider it a reminder for sort of everyone and not just kind of a British and what other nations were involved in those conflicts. You see it as a reminder completely against war and that it's something we should always try and avoid.
Well, all sides have done things to one another, big and small, in time gone past that are unforgivable. But we've got to forgive and we've got to move on. Okay. Holding grudges and being or saying things from a nationalistic point of view is wrong. It's not the way to go.
That's completely fair. Do you think that professional athletes should be able to sort of opt in or out of the wearing the poppy sort of before the season starts to save the sort of riff-raff of headlines on the weekend?
Everybody's their own person, and they can. It's just like if he didn't want to sign up for the war 100 years ago, that was his opinion. But it's just, as I say, a shame. It's a celebration of remembrance of all people on all sides who've lost the war, and perhaps someone should sit down and explain that to them, and they could think about it a little bit further or a little bit harder.
Do you think that owners of these of professional sports teams or maybe like governing bodies should decide for people so that you know, instead of it being like the people who run the leagues or the sort of foundations, it should be the individual clubs?
No, because I brought a poppy when I was at the NFL up in London recently, and I've lost it. I lost it on the day, but I made a £5 donation, knowing that money's going to help people who have been hurt in battle in the past and in recent times. I'll quite gladly go to Remembrance service on Sunday and not have my poppy on, but I'm there at the service remembering. I'm making a gesture to remember the war dead in all wars at all time, the sacrifice of young people often.
Well, you're very you're very passionate about this. Do you consider it something that should just be done on the first weekend, or do you consider it something that should be a November-wide event?
To me, it's a bit strange that everybody gets on the bandwagon a little bit in the UK, and I can see why it probably irks some European people. Coming from New Zealand, we made a point of getting up at dawn and going to the dawn service, and that's the Remembrance was done, and poppies were sold from, the Wednesday through to the day, Anzac Day, we have in New Zealand, which is a public holiday. So they'd sell the poppies for 3 days, and that would be it. They'd raise the money, and we'd have the celebration and remembrance, and that would be done. Where over here, everybody seems to be getting a bigger and larger poppy on for the whole month on TV and in the media and the like.
Okay, well, that's completely understandable. Now, you say you're from New Zealand, and if we could move on slightly, we are talking about the rugby on the weekend later. How do you feel the England All Black game will fare?
After watching last week's game, I think Eddie Jones is going to be rather sad.
Can you see nothing but a riot for the All Blacks?
They're just rampant at the moment. I just, even if they put their lesser team up against England at the moment with their injuries, I think they'd still scrape through with a reasonable win.
Okay, well, brilliant. Thank you for calling in, Pete. It's been fantastic having you on the show, and I hope you have an enjoyable rest of your day.
No worries. I hope you boys have all got your poppies on.
Don't worry, we have.
See you later.
Ta-ra.
Talking Bulls on Jam Live Radio.
Welcome back to Talking Bulls. You're listening with me, Tim March, Rob Tunley, Connor Mumford and Pete Chapman. Now, as we said just before the song break there, we're going to talk a little bit about England and the All Blacks who are playing on the weekend. Rob, England, you could argue, were very lucky to get the result they did against South Africa on the weekend. But as our caller Pete said, can you see anything other than an All Blacks win?
At the moment, no. As you said, they were very lucky to get away with that against South Africa. A couple of dodgy tackles throughout the game, especially at the end. They scraped through it by the skin of their teeth, but still, that is a testament, because South Africa are an up-and-coming team at the moment. They beat the All Blacks themselves last month in New Zealand, which
very few do.
I'm not even going to, the years at a time that goes by, that doesn't happen. So South Africa are on the upswing, which is perfect for them heading up to the World Cup. But England, unfortunately, a year or two ago, they were undefeated for about 18 months, and I think they drew level with the All Blacks' undefeated consecutive game record. Unfortunately, though, in this past year, they've had a mixed slate of results, which isn't great. With the World Cup coming up in Tokyo, or Japan, not just Tokyo, next year, this is the time Eddie Jones wants his squad to be on point, really, and it's yet to be seen.
It's a 4-year project, and the only time you need to be at your best is in the 4th year, and the only time you need to be at your best in the 4th year is your crunch match at the World Cup, which may be a pool game, maybe a quarter final, because once you get the semi and the final, it's you got 4 great teams or 2 great teams, and it's a toss of the coin then. So you got to peak at the right time, and the World Cup preparation's not getting too excited. Like, everyone's going to get excited in November. But in reality, those games aren't going to be great benchmarks for what happens at the World Cup. You find out things about the team, how you can possibly beat a team, but you don't want to show them everything.
That was Eddie Jones there, the England head coach, the Australian, obviously, so this game means a lot to him.
A good match, yeah.
Rob, do you think New Zealand would have rather played England maybe a year or two ago when they were on arguably better form? A bigger test for New Zealand?
I'm gonna say no, they wouldn't have, because they wouldn't want the opportunity to lose. But I think as fans, me included, being a New Zealander as well, I would have loved to have seen, even in the last autumn international series, New Zealand was over here, and I know the scheduling works basically once every 4 years. These big teams play each other in individual countries. It would have been great to watch as a fan because they were both at the top of their retrospective hemispheres. At the moment, answering your earlier question, I don't see a way England's going to be able to get past the All Blacks. They do get Danny Cipriani back, but he was England are without Cipriani, and he was overlooked for England's autumn series squad. He put a significant dent. That's got to put a significant dent in his hopes of getting to Japan. Cipriani has made a strong start to the season at Gloucester. He was actually named Gallagher Premiership Player of the Month in September, yet he's been left out. New Zealand themselves are getting a few players back from injury, but for the most part, New Zealand have been running quite a lot of their second squad because they're just so deep that they don't need these starting players out there risking injury. Maybe they'll run them out for half of a half as a leadership role, like Beauden Barrett. He's been named, Rugby Player of the Year, I think 3 years running now.
Do you feel that they're just saving their, big time players for the tournament, just ensuring that they can be in the best shape possible for them?
Exactly. Recently, they played Japan, and it was over a 100-point game, and I think we won 59-16. That was last weekend. We played them in Tokyo, and I think we fielded 19 young players who have only had, 1 or 2 caps each. 19, and we won 59-16. Now, granted, Japan is not a world-class team, but Japan did beat South Africa in the last World Cup in the group stages, but I think England need to be worried. New Zealand fielding their first team at Twickenham. If England can beat them, well, wow, what a way to plant the flag. That would really right the ship. And
be a statement win.
Yeah, but I don't see it happening at the moment.
Now, Rob, for any listeners who don't know, you actually have dual citizenship between New Zealand and England. So this game itself is an interesting experience for you. Who do you root for in general? You do sound... your accent, your Kiwi accent seems to get stronger the more and more you speak about New Zealand.
You sound a lot like that caller earlier on.
Yeah. Depends what sport I'm supporting, isn't it?
But rugby-wise, you'll be back in...
It's got to be the All Blacks.
It's
always been the All Blacks, growing up watching them. And, with the size of New Zealand, a lot of the players you grow up watching, Super League, Super 12 rugby in New Zealand, a lot of the players in the All Black squad play... for provincial teams that you grew up watching. So a lot of the guys, the Surveyor brothers, Beauden Barrett, I think Geordie Barrett, they all live in Wellington, which is where I'm from. So it's almost like watching people say, if you're from Plymouth, watching a bunch of Plymouthonians playing in the England squad, of course you're going to, always support the All Blacks. And I'm 100% behind them.
Okay, well, the other fixtures on the weekend, Scotland have taken on Fiji, which will probably be an interesting one. Wales taking on Australia, that'll be a huge challenge for them. Ireland taking on Argentina, always an interesting watch. And France taking on South Africa, as you said, Rob. South Africa have had some good results recently, so they'll be looking to get a win over a good French side.
A lot of good games to keep an eye on, especially that South Africa game. Catch them all, I think, Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, it's going to be a big weekend for any rugby fan.
We're going to play you another song now, and then we'll move on to the NFL.
You're listening to Talking Balls on Jam Live Radio.
Now, as promised, we'll be talking about NFL Fantasy League. Rob, who should people be looking out for this week?
Well, I've got a short little list for you guys to get yourselves geared up to get those bragging points over colleagues and friends in your NFL fantasy leagues heading into week 10 of the NFL season. At quarterback, stardom, Washington Redskins quarterback Alex Smith. Now, yes, Washington Redskins quarterback has had a reputation for being more conservative quarterback who doesn't lie up the stat sheet, but he's in a great spot against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who've allowed the most points per game in the NFL. No team has allowed more fantasy points to quarterback either, so I think he's definitely a lock to start. In terms of sitting, Seattle Seahawks, the team aren't where they were 3-4 years ago. The supporting cast of Russell Wilson aren't there. He's not really doing it with his legs. They've just they've just released Brandon Marshall as well. So if you're going to sit a quarterback, sit Russell Wilson. Maybe for sleeper at quarterback, the San Francisco 49ers' new quarterback, Nick Mullins. He had a fantastic start to his rookie year against the Oakland Raiders last weekend. Granted, the Oakland Raiders aren't what they are, but he's also going against the New York Giants, who aren't really where they are either. They've got 1 win, 7 losses. So if you want a sleeper, Nick Mullins, pick him up from the waiver wire. At running back, Indianapolis Colts running back Marlon Mack. The Jacksonville Jaguars have a tough defense, but the team are reeling after losing 4 straight. I think you'll be able to get in there and get some points for you guys. In terms of sitting, Oakland Raiders running back Doug Martin. I don't know what the Raiders are doing right now. They've got a bit of a fire sale going on. Their offensive line is a shambles. They can barely open up a running lane. So definitely sit Doug Martin there. Sleeper, Cincinnati Bengals, Giovanni Bernard. Do you remember that guy? He hasn't been around a while. Yeah, second in voting for Rookie of the Year 3-4 years ago. He hasn't had too much production for the Cincinnati Bengals. And he's also missed 4 games, but he might do okay this week. At wide receiver, stardom Arizona Cardinals wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald, the veteran, against Kansas City, who have the most leaky defense in the entire league. But that's it for me. Those are my main picks and sits for week 10.
Oh, great insight, Rob. Thank you very much. Now, there are some NFL fixtures on this Thursday. What are the games that people should be looking out for? Who are we keeping our eye on?
Well, big night, Thursday night football. It seems the league have really focused on scheduling actually half-decent games for Thursday night. They've been trying to, for years now, they've been putting the crappiest teams basically on Thursday night. But this Thursday night looks really good. Pittsburgh Steelers, Carolina Panthers. NFC South's wide open. Carolina Panthers, 7 wins, 1 loss. Pittsburgh Steelers, 5 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. 2 very good teams, 2 very good quarterbacks in Cam Newton and Ben Roethlisberger. The Pittsburgh Steelers have managed to shake off a bit of an early season hangover, as you'd say. They started out drawing against the Browns, which is embarrassing in itself, but they've bounced back nicely, led by Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, and Juju Smith-Schuster. They don't seem to be reeling too much from the loss to Le'Veon Bell, although a cryptic tweet was released this week, Bell saying farewell to Miami, so maybe we'll see the star running back returning to Pittsburgh. The Panthers obviously have been fantastic behind Cam Newton. He's such a strong runner. Steve Smith out wide receiver there. I think it's going to be a fantastic matchup.
If you had to pick one, Rob, and you're only allowed to watch one game on Thursday, which one would you pick?
Oh, that Thursday night game looks pretty juicy, to be honest with you. If I had to pick another game, big battle in the NFC North again, Chicago Bears and Detroit Lions. The Lions are on a bit of a downward slide, and the Chicago Bears are looking to maintain their top spot there in the NFC North. I think it's going to be a bit of a grudge match up there. Both teams need a win, and I think it's going to be rather competitive, especially, if Detroit's offensive line can hold out this time and not give up 10 sacks like they did last week to the Minnesota Vikings.
Great. Thanks for your insight, Rob.
Listen to Talking Balls, 2 p.m. Mondays and Wednesdays on Jam Live Radio.
Talking Balls on Jam Live Radio.
Welcome back. Next up, we're going to talk some NBA. The season is well and truly under, with each team about 11 or 12 games in. It's already been plenty of headlines already from this season.
Quite heated already, especially last night. How about Kyrie Irving throwing the ball into the crowd after the game?
Absolute mayhem. In fact, we've got a clip from that, some interviews from the players.
What a night for Jamal Murray.
He did.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Seltzer, remember that.
You wanted 50. The crowd wanted you to get 50. And I know you had a nice little conversation with Marcus Smart afterwards. No harm done, right?
No, we good. He knows I was trying to get 50. I didn't mean no harm. I should have done it, but they understand I was trying to get 50. But it was a good dub. It was a fun game. Hope y'all fans enjoyed it.
I mean, what kind of competitor wouldn't it bother? You know what I'm saying? So, I understand if we fouled him going to the free throw line. I don't want to make a big deal. Obviously, I was pissed off at the game, but it's time to decompress and move on. Congratulations to him having 48 points. He did it in a great fashion against us. Our defense has to be better, especially against a player like that, mid pick and roll. He was a primary concern tonight, and he made us pay in certain instances of just making some tough shots and some tough layups, and but the ball deserves to go in the crowd after a move like that. So do it in the crowd.
Now, for some context for you who don't know, the Denver Nuggets took on the Boston Celtics the other night, and the Denver Nuggets got an impressive win. Their point guard Jamal Murray scoring 48 points, I believe a career high for him. Now, traditionally in the NBA, if you've got the ball and you've already got a convincing win, you
run the clock out, don't you?
Yeah, you run the clock out. But Jamal Murray, for me, understandably, decided to shoot at the buzzer for his 50 points. And
if you watch the clip, it's not even a proper shot. Last second he just kind of lazily throws one up there from well beyond the arc.
For me, it seems like he was caught between two minds, whether to, because he wanted to walk the ball up. Also, if he gets 50 points, then that might be, it could arguably be the height of his career. But Boston Stars point guard did not take a liking to it afterwards, did he, Rob?
Yeah, he kind of broke one of those unwritten rules in sports. Like in baseball, you never stand on the foul line. You don't do something like that. That's just like a total middle finger to the face of the Celtics. So Kyrie Irving definitely took offense to that, didn't he?
Throwing the ball into the stands, and the NBA decided to fine him $25,000 for the honor. Of course, Kyrie not happy about that.
Well, as said in songs, 25 grand ain't nothing to a G. I don't think that matters much to him. I think it's more the respect issue for Kyrie Irving. Do you think, despite the fact the Celtics lost and Denver got a brilliant win, do you think anyone could stop the Celtics in the East?
Well, at the start of the season, I think a lot of people assumed that the Celtics and the Sixers would, sit at the top of the East. It was just a case of if the Sixers could compete with them. But Toronto have been amazing. I believe that they acquired Kawhi Leonard, who's an MVP candidate over the summer, and when he hasn't played, their record's been 3-1, and when he has played, their record is 7-0. So, their roster is just almost like the Celtics. They've got a really deep roster with loads of really young guys, but their system is flawless. They've got a first-year coach, but who's looking like he's been a veteran for years and years. And if anything, I'd say that maybe the Bucks have a better chance of stopping the Celtics than the Sixers do.
Saying that though, the Bucks picked up a pretty big loss to themselves, didn't they?
Yeah. So last night, CJ McCollum scored 40 points against them, dropping a few people on their feet, dropping a few people on their bums during the game. Given the Bucks only their second loss of the year.
You've got to say that's a bit of a blip though. The Bucks have been immaculate. They went on a massive undefeated. Was it 8 or 9 games undefeated at the start of the season?
Yeah, so 8-0 I believe to start the season. I think one of their one of their highest ever starts in the franchise. Giannis Antetokounmpo understandably is going for a MVP year. He's by far the best player on that team, and
he's in a contract year as well, and he hasn't confirmed he's going back to the Bucks, so maybe he's put on a showreel for the rest of the league.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's one of my favorite players. He's just one of these Greek freak. He is a freak athlete. He's the sort of guy you're one step from the free throw line and he's already at the hoop. He scored arguably the dunk of the week last week, completely towering over his opponent from basically deep inside the paint, and for me that they're one of the favourites for the East.
So, how much does LeBron James have to do? He'll see the biggest off-season move in the NBA, out to the Lakers to join that dynasty. How much does LeBron have to do to get MVP? I think if LA get less than 50 wins, he's not in contention.
Well, for me, LeBron's always going to be in the MVP race because he's the best player in the league by far. Ultimately, it helps if you're on a winning team, and if he can get LA to 50 wins, and if he is by far the star on that team, then it would arguably be enough. Unless Giannis goes on, one of the greatest, or Anthony Davis has one of the greatest single season careers ever. But LeBron's always going to be in the conversation. Even if LA miss out by a scratch, the reason they would have got all those wins is because of LeBron. He's by far the best player on that team.
But look at Cleveland now. Cleveland almost seemed completely lost without LeBron.
After 2 games, Cleveland this season completely blew up. They've been a joke. They fired their head coach. They've been telling guys that they're not going to play and sit in them, and then the next game they'll play them 25 minutes.
Everything's kind of pointless though, because the matter of the fact still remains it's David and Goliath. The whole league against Golden State Warriors. They still have their All-Star 5 returning, and well, maybe if the cap stays next year, we might not see all the names return, but it almost seems another inevitability that Steph Curry and Kevin Durant are going to, win it again, aren't they?
Well, their head coach, Steve Kerr, said earlier in the week that they definitely, the likelihood of them re-signing DeMarcus Cousins, their big-time summer acquirement, they probably won't sign him again because they simply can't afford it. And for them, the motivation this year is to get him a ring. He's arguably the most talented centre in the league, and he's been given a bit of a rough deal at times.
I know the league is really rethinking their cap space rules, which gave favour to a lot of teams that could exploit it, which has basically led to these Golden State Warriors dominating for 5 years. And I think the league will be changing the way they finance teams in the future to stop this from happening again. Do you think that's a good thing?
Well, ultimately, when you look at the NBA, they get their most viewers when dynasties are being created. More people watch the NBA more than ever. It makes more money than ever, and that's because of the Golden State Warriors. It was the same in the 90s with Jordan's Bulls. It was the same in the 80s with Magic Johnson's Lakers. for me, I don't think the league are unhappy about all these great players being on one team, but for competitiveness and for hardcore NBA fans, I think they'll want to see a slight tweak in the rules to ensure that 5 All-Stars can't be on one team.
I think it refers to all American sports. I'd love a change just in general, because a lot of these out-of-market teams get good, but then they have all their talent completely demolished. Like you look at the Denver Nuggets, I think we've discussed in the past how all 5 of their players aren't all-star players, but they're good. They bounce off each other, and the likelihood is either by the trade deadline this season or even next season, they're going to lose all those great players and they're going to be mediocre again, aren't they?
They'll be picked apart. You see it in all sports, when a smaller team, puts together a great system with great players, it very rarely lasts a long time because they will just get picked apart by the better teams.
Oh, well, shall we just give the viewers a quick mention on the traveling circus that is the Big Baller brand, the Ball family?
So an update with the Big Baller brand, everyone, the Kardashians of basketball. Their youngest son, LaMelo, is going back to high school after dropping out 2 years ago and spending a stint in Lithuania with his middle brother, going to one of the top high school teams. And the middle brother, LiAngelo, is going to go in, I believe, I'm not sure.
B-League, isn't he, I think?
Yeah.
He hasn't confirmed a team there, has he?
No team's confirmed. There was talks during the draft that a G League team might be best for him. He wasn't one of the best prospects. He was never going to get drafted. So I think that this is probably the most sensible move for him, but I think he's probably going to struggle to even get minutes there. I think the younger brother probably has got a better chance of making the league, and it's probably a sensible choice by him to go back to high school. I haven't seen
any news out of the family yet, but they're meant to be playing late this month in London against the London Lions. I'm not sure if that's still on or
not. Big Baller brand are not a reliable corporation. I think if you've bought tickets to that, you should double check that it's definitely still on. But enough. I think that's enough NBA chat for now. We're going to go to Pete and Connor to look ahead at the weekend's football. Pete, talking the Premier League, what game should we be looking out for?
Sorry about that. The big one over the weekend is definitely the Manchester derby. Man United travel to the Etihad to try and get anything over from Man City. It's not going to happen. I'm really sad. But yeah, that's the biggest game by a mile. Chelsea Everton also on Sunday. 2:15 kickoff is a good one to look out for. But yeah, the Manchester derby, as always, will steal the headlines.
And Connor, it's obviously not the start of the FA Cup this weekend, but what the fixtures look out for?
Yeah, it's the first official round of the FA Cup, and so I've picked out a few. Obviously, the one that will be on TV this Friday evening is Haringey Borough versus AFC Wimbledon. Mm-hmm. So that's a very small team taking on a League One side, I want to say, Wimbledon now?
Yeah, League One side, but for them, you'd think Harrington would be excited about that, Wimbledon being a former FA Cup winner.
There's a couple more. You've got a semi-local derby in Oxford United versus Forest Green Rovers. Local to us, Plymouth Argyle are at home to Stevenage. And then one that everyone always looks out for is the Metropolitan Police.
Of course.
They're at home to Newport County, and personally, obviously because it's my team, I'm looking forward to Swindon Town versus York City.
Do you think that'll be a convincing win for Swindon? Do you have any hope that Swindon will do anything in this tournament this year?
No, definitely not. But I mean, the past few seasons we've been being knocked out every season in the first round, normally to a lower league opposition. But I think York City are either in the same league. I think they're probably above us in the league. So there's always a chance. We're at home, so we have that kind of advantage, but at the same time we're inconsistent, so we're not winning, but we're not losing.
Well, as a Swindon Town fan, a lot of people say that one of the trickiest things in football is sort of the mediocrity of falling mid-table, but Swindon have been yo-yoing a bit over the last few years. Do you think that your team Swindon kind of need a cup run to sort of maybe put a bit more life back into the club, or do you think that they should put all their energy into the league and ensuring that they can finish as high as possible?
I don't think either's going to happen. But I think in terms of financially, they need a cup run just to bring in some more revenue to the club. But it's difficult because although we've still in the what do you call it? The what was the Johnston's Paint Trophy? We're still in that, which is a useless lower league cup competition. So there's still 2 to go. We were knocked out in the Carabao Cup, even though it was our 50-year anniversary of winning it against Arsenal back in 69. I think, I hate myself, I got that wrong.
Showing your history.
True fan.
But I'd like to see us go up to League One again this season, but it didn't happen last season. It doesn't look like things are going to happen this season based on the current form of the team, which is a shame because I don't think we're bad enough to be in League Two, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay, thank you for that roundup, Connor. I'm afraid that's sort of all we've got for you today here at Talking Balls. I'd like to thank you for listening. You've been listening to Pete Chapman, Connor Mumford,
afternoon,
Rob Tunley,
g'day,
and Tim March. We all hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You're listening to Talking Balls on Jam Live Radio.